Hello! In this video, I'm going to respond to Braxton Hunter's 7 questions for Christian YouTubers. So, without further ado...
Number 1. What do you mean when you say you are a Christian?
C.S. Lewis argues somewhere, I can't remember where, that the word Christian becomes pretty much useless unless we define the term a Christian to mean someone who believes Christian things. I tend to agree. So I just mean that I believe Christian things. Now, this raises a further question. What do we mean by Christian things? If we had to make a list of all the things you need to believe in order to be called a Christian, what goes on there? Some stuff would obviously go on the list, like God exists and God raised Jesus from the dead and so on. But some people debate whether or not stuff like the Trinity or the inspiration of the Bible are necessary as well. Do those doctrines go on the list? This question is harder than it looks, because answering it requires providing and defending a theory of how words are defined, and subsequently applying this theory to the word Christian. For example, if you think that a word's definition comes from how authoritative sources define the word, then maybe you could argue that ancient councils have dictated the definition of Christian, and thus to be a Christian, you need to assent to the Nicene Creed and whatever other creeds you deem authoritative. Or maybe you think that words are defined by social convention, and then to figure out what beliefs are required for counting as a Christian, we would just need to go out and run a big survey. At any rate though, I happen to believe most doctrines that would go on the list no matter how you slice it. So in my case personally, I could be pretty confident that I am indeed a Christian.
Number 2. What is the purpose of your channel?
It's an apologetics channel. But not a lame apologetics channel like Trinity Radio. No, I provide actually good arguments. Joking aside, I focus on non-traditional apologetics arguments, and I'm currently in the process of developing a series where I provide a cumulative case for Christianity's truth.
Number 3. To what extent do you include considerations about spiritual content, like prayer or guidance?
I frequently pray when making my videos that God would be glorified through them.
Number 4. If someone asks you why they should be a Christian, what do you say?
From my experience, your average Joe on the street does not need a Bayesian cumulative case for the truth of Christianity. There are people who would benefit from that stuff, hence my channel's existence, but they're in a minority. For most people, I would answer by just laying out the gospel to them. We humans, due to our moral failings, are placed at a great distance from God. We have sinned against the source of everything that's good. However, through Jesus, God has made a way to reconcile us to himself, and we can enter into a relationship with God. It seems like the human mind is structured in such a way as to be very receptive to this message. Something in us is inclined towards believing the gospel. I mean, if nothing else, this should be made apparent by the sheer number of Christians worldwide. So yeah, I just share the gospel with them, and hopefully that sparks more conversations. However, all this raises a very interesting question. If I want someone to believe something, shouldn't I use rational argumentation to persuade them, rather than emotions or whatever? Here's what I'm getting at. If you're a naturalist, chances are you believe that the innate receptiveness that humans have towards the gospel is an accidental byproduct of some evolutionary or cultural process, completely disconnected from actually getting at the truth of the matter. So, I should use something like arguments for Christianity's truth instead of abusing these accidental features of human psychology. However, since I am a Christian, and I think God is responsible for the way the human mind is structured, I actually don't think that I'm abusing some accidental feature of human psychology. God designed humans to be receptive to the gospel because the gospel is true. So, if I share the gospel with someone and they're predisposed to believe me, don't blame me, take it up with God.
Number 5. What Christian beliefs or commitments do you think are essential for salvation?
I actually don't think I've studied the first half of this question, what beliefs are essential to salvation, enough to give a good answer. That might sound weird, but I think there are a lot of difficult issues that need to be untangled here. To start out, we have a lot of belief-like mental states. That is to say, there are a lot of attitudes we might have that can be called belief, such as thinking something is true, representing the world to yourself as being some way, having a high credence in something, trusting something, acting as if something is true, wagering on something's truth, and so on. So, answering this question not only involves figuring out what must be believed, but also what we mean by believe. At the end of the day, I'm going to defer to the exegesis of scholars of relevant passages like Acts 16:31. But where I lean right now, I think that the belief-like mental state essential for salvation is probably something more akin to trust than simply thinking that certain propositions are true. Now, interestingly, the mental state of trust doesn't need to be directed towards a proposition, but could also be directed towards a person. So plausibly, you need to trust in Jesus rather than trust that something or other is true. Now, I have tons more I'd like to say on this topic, but I'm going to wait until I've researched this stuff a bit more before spouting off. Anyways, for the second half of this question, the commitment that Christianity requires is prioritizing God above everything and everyone else.
Number 6, besides making silly videos with lists of questions like this one, what do you wish other Christian YouTubers would do differently?
Well, I tend to avoid social commentary, so I don't have much to say here. I do think there are plenty of arguments that circulate in the YouTube Christian apologetics community that aren't very good, but I plan to address those in my cumulative case series, so I won't bring any of those up here.
Number 7, what is the best thing that has happened as a result of your experience as a Christian YouTuber?
I find the debate on whether or not Christianity is true to be such a monumentally important question that if I even bring a tiny contribution to the table by improving one argument in some way, that this amounts to a truly worthwhile endeavor. The truth of Christianity is infinitely important, so even the smallest contribution to this dialogue that has been going on for 2,000 years is extremely weighty. And being a Christian YouTuber allows me to advance my ideas and build up new arguments in a public forum. So, in my opinion, contributing to this conversation is, in of itself, the best part. Anyways, that's the end of this video. Thanks for watching, and thanks Braxton for making your video. Please subscribe if you enjoy this content.